jungle.
This AI rendered representation of the proceedings in the United States versus Sean Combs is based on the official court transcripts.
The government may call its next witness.
The government calls Daniel Phillip.
Remain standing and please raise your right hand.
Sure.
Daniel Phillip, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows.
Thank you. You may be seated.
All right, Ms. Comey, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would you please state and spell your name for the record?
Daniel Phillip, Daniel Phillip.
How old are you?
I am 41.
How far did you go in school?
I did some college.
I would like to direct your attention to the period around approximately 2012 and 2013. During that time, what were you doing for work?
I was managing a male review show.
What is a male review show?
Male strippers for women.
In what city?
New York.
From where else did you receive money in approximately 2012?
From Cassandra Ventura.
Can we please pull up what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 2A-401? Mr. Phillip, do you recognize the person in that photograph?
Yes,
Who is that?
that is Cassandra Ventura, or Cassie.
What did Cassie Ventura give you money for in around 2012?
To have sex with her,
Who else was present when you had sex with Ms. Ventura in exchange for money?
Sean Combs.
Can we now please pull up what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 2A-101? Do you recognize the person in that photograph?
Yes,
Who is that?
Sean Combs.
We can take that down. Thank you. About when did you first meet Ms. Ventura?
I'm estimating, but probably 2012 or 13.
Through whom did you first meet Ms. Ventura?
Through my boss.
What did your boss tell you?
He contacted me one evening and told me that he couldn't find any of our black dancers, which was what was requested. So he asked me if I would mind going down to fulfill an order to have a dancer go down to the Gramercy Park Hotel for a bachelorette party.
How did you respond?
I told him I would do it.
To what location did your boss send you?
To the Gramercy Park Hotel.
Where is that hotel located?
In Gramercy Park, downtown Manhattan.
What were you expecting to do at the Gramercy Park Hotel?
I was expecting to go do a little striptease, and that was it. Just for a bachelorette party, a group of women, and then leave.
At what time of day did you arrive at the Gramercy Park Hotel?
Probably sometime after midnight.
So nighttime?
Nighttime.
What happened when you arrived at the Gramercy Park Hotel?
When I arrived, Cassie opened the door, and she asked me, if I was okay if it was just going to be us, because I was expecting to see a group of women there. But there was only her standing the door. And, she asked me to come into the room. We were standing in, like, a foyer. And she basically said it was her birthday and that her husband wanted to do something special for her. And so she asked me if I would, she told me that, first off, that I didn't have to worry about anything because her husband wasn't gay. I remember her saying that to me, and he wasn't going to try to touch me or anything. And I told her, that's good, because I wasn't with that. And then she told me that she knew that my boss told her that she...
Objection.
Your Honor, it's not offered for the truth, just to provide context for the statement coming next.
That's overruled.
Continue?
You may continue.
Okay. She told me that she knew that my boss had told her that she had to give me $200 upon arrival. And, at that point, she gave me a few $1,000s and said that, at the end she would tip me when I'm leaving, before I'm leaving.
After she handed you cash, what part of the hotel room did you go into with Ms. Ventura?
We went into the main living room area.
What kind of hotel room was this room?
I believe it was a suite.
What did the living room area look like when you walked into it that night?
It had like velvet couches straight ahead, and it opened up into a big living room. And there was a table in front of the couch, and there were candles that were lit all over the table. Yeah, and And then the rest of the room was dark.
What else, if anything, did you see on the table?
There were bottles of baby oil and Astraglide, which is a lubricant.
Who else did you see in the living room when you walked into it?
There was a man sitting on the right side of the room, if I was facing him, to the back of the room.
What was the man wearing?
A white robe with a bandana over his face and, like, a baseball cap on his head.
What part of this man's face was the bandana covering?
His nose down.
So, were you able to see his face clearly?
No.
How, if at all, did Ms. Ventura refer to the man in the room?
As Babe.
Did you later learn who that man was?
I did.
What did you learn about that?
Well, if you're asking, when did I realize who he was?
Sure.
As soon as he spoke to me.
So when he spoke to you, whose voice did you recognize?
That was Sean Combs.
Had you heard Sean Combs' voice before?
Yes.
In what context?
In every form I've ever seen him in entertainment.
Did you later see his face uncovered at a later date?
I did, yes.
Now, that first night, what did you and Mr. Combs say to each other?
Not much. I complimented the room, the hotel that we were in, and I asked him what he did for a living. And he told me that he was in importing and exporting. That was the first conversation we had. And then, as I was getting ready to leave the hotel, he spoke to me again and told me that, I guess he had some trouble with my boss.
Objection.
Mr. Phillips will talk about that conversation later.
Okay.
Let's focus now on when you first entered the room and when you first started interacting with Mr. Combs. After you had that brief conversation with him, what did you and Ms. Ventura do?
We ended up having sex.
Before you and Ms. Ventura had intercourse, what, if anything, did you rub on each other?
Baby oil.
For about how long did that last?
Couple minutes.
And then what happened?
And then I ended up having sex with her.
What was Mr. Combs doing while you and Ms. Ventura rubbed baby oil on each other?
He was sitting in the corner masturbating, watching us.
What was he doing while you and Ms. Ventura were having sex?
He was sitting in the corner masturbating.
About how long did the sex with Ms. Ventura last that first time?
Not long at all.
And how did that sexual encounter end?
With me ejaculating.
What, if any, protection were you wearing?
I wasn't at that time.
After you finished having sex with Ms. Ventura, but before you left that hotel room, what, if anything, did she or Mr. Combs give you?
Cassie gave me more money. Well, I think it was a couple $1,000s more.
Before you left the hotel room, after that first encounter, what do you remember Mr. Combs saying to you?
He said that he had some issues with my boss at the time. And said that.
Objection.
Your Honor, it's an opposing party statement.
Grounds for the objection. Hearsay, Judge. I didn't get that.
It's the statement of the defendant.
First of all, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry, Judge. Hearsay. Okay, that's overruled.
Can you repeat for us what Mr. Combs said?
He said he was having some issues with my boss at the time. I guess he was. My boss was being a bit aggressive. And he asked me if I would like to see them again. Continue seeing them, and so...
And let me ask you, how did you respond to that?
I said, sure. And he told Cassie to take my phone number, and she took my phone number, and that was that.
After you gave them your phone number, where did you go?
I left the hotel. I was getting ready to go home.
And about how long after you left the hotel did you hear from them again?
A few minutes after.
What happened?
Cassie asked me if I would mind sending her a picture of my penis.
How did she contact you?
Via my cell phone.
How did you respond?
I gave her a picture of my penis.
What was the next communication you had with her?
She asked me if I could come back upstairs and see her again.
How did you respond?
I went back upstairs to see her again.
So where did you go back to?
The same hotel room that we were in.
And who was in the hotel room when you returned to it?
The same two people, Cassie Ventura and Sean Combs.
About how long were you in that hotel room this second time?
A few hours?
What do you remember happening over those few hours?
The same thing. It was literally the same exact scene, basically. We rubbed baby oil on each other. We had sex again for longer this time, and then I was done. I do not recollect whether or not they gave me anything after that, money-wise.
What was Mr. Combs doing while you were having this sexual encounter with Ms. Ventura?
He was masturbating in the corner.
And what, if anything, do you remember him saying during this second sexual encounter?
At what point? While we were...
Yes.
I don't know if I remember him saying anything.
At the end of that sexual encounter with Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs, At that point when you left, did you know who Ms. Ventura was?
Yes. You're saying when I left the hotel the second time? Mind rubbing baby oil on her and giving her a massage? And, wherever things went from there. Based on how comfortable I was?
Let me ask you some follow-up questions.
Sure.
Did you know her name at that moment?
No.
Did you later learn her name?
Yes.
And what did you later learn her name was?
Cassandra Ventura.
And what did you call her during your later interactions?
C.
When she first opened the door and invited you just inside the door, what was Ms. Ventura wearing?
Lingerie. Like a red lace outfit with high heels, a red wig, and some sunglasses. Dark sunglasses.
And after Ms. Ventura told you about her husband being there and baby oil, what, if anything, did she give you when you were in that entryway of the hotel room?
She asked me, if I...
Objection. Rephrase the question.
After telling you what she wanted that evening, what did Ms. Ventura say next? Yes.
No.
When did you learn who she was?
My boss looked her up and told me who she was.
Approximately how many more times did you have sex with Ms. Ventura in front of Mr. Combs for money?
Well, I had sex with Cassie a few times after that.
Did you ever meet Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs in person for any reason other than to have sex with Ms. Ventura in front of Mr. Combs?
Objection. Form of the question. You can rephrase the question.
Every time you met with Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs, what was the purpose of the meeting?
To have sex with Cassie.
In front of who?
In front of Mr. Combs.
Approximately, when was the last time you met in person with Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs?
I'm estimating, but probably the end of 2013, early 2014.
In what city did all of these meetings take place?
New York.
In what borough?
Manhattan.
At what locations do you remember having these encounters with Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
At what locations do you remember meeting with Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs?
The Gramercy Park Hotel, the Jumeirah Essex House, Intercontinental, his personal residence on 56th Street, her personal residence on West End Avenue. And there may be more. I'm not remembering.
You said his personal residence. Who are you referring to?
Mr. Combs, Sean Combs.
And you said her personal residence. Who were you referring to?
Cassie's residence.
And where was that?
Cassie lived on West End Avenue. I think number 10 West End Avenue. And then Sean Combs, I believe he lived at 210 West 56th Street at the time.
When you met them at hotels, in what kind of rooms did you generally meet them?
In suites. Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
Okay.
What, if any, name did Ms. Ventura tell you to give hotel management if you were asked who you were there to see?
Black.
For each of these locations, how did you learn that they wanted to meet you there?
Cassie either called me or texted me.
How much notice did you generally receive between when Cassie would contact you and when you were supposed to arrive for a meeting?
It could be anywhere between an hour to a couple of days.
Did you yourself reach out affirmatively to Cassie via text?
Yeah.
Why was that?
At some point after some things had happened, I always wanted to know that she was good. I used to try to get her to text me to tell me that, she was good. And then, when she wouldn't reply, eventually I started sending her, more vulgar text messages to see if I could get her, more interested to see me again so that I could actually see her in person and know that she was good.
And when you say you sent her vulgar text messages, what do you mean?
I can recall sending her at least one message telling her that I wanted to... You want me to say it?
If you wouldn't mind giving an example.
I want to fuck you right now.
And are those the kind of vulgar text messages you would send her?
Not often, but once or twice, yeah.
To the best of your recollection, did Cassie ever respond to those vulgar text messages?
I don't think so.
During your sexual encounters with Cassie and Mr. Combs, generally how were the rooms decorated?
Sometimes sheets or like towels on the couch. The curtains were always shut fully. There was always a table in front of the couch, and there was always candles on that table. And also bottles of baby oil or Astroglide, and then there were a few occasions where they would ask me to actually go to the pharmacy and pick those things up. I guess because they didn't have them at their location.
Across all of these encounters, how often did you use baby oil?
Every time.
Other than that first time at the Gramercy Park Hotel, who directed you to use baby oil.
Well, are you asking? Okay, I think I understand. So, the first time Cassie did. And then I guess we kind of knew what to do after that. But Sean Combs would often tell us, y'all need to rub more baby oil on each other. You're not like, you don't have enough on.
So what types of things do you remember Mr. Combs saying to you and to Ms. Ventura about baby oil during these encounters?
He would just tell us to put more on.
Across all of these encounters, after the first one, who, if anyone, gave directions about how to engage in sexual activity?
Sean Combs did.
What are some of the directions you remember Mr. Combs giving to you and Ms. Ventura?
He would tell us things like, slow down, y'all stop now, separate from each other. It's getting too much now. It's getting too hot. Y'all, one time he had us try to role play like we had just met at an airport. And yeah, we're not very good at that at all. So I think we skipped past that one really quickly. Yeah, but mainly it was more like, don't come yet. Don't come. If you feel like you're going to come, don't come yet. Things like that.
About how often during these encounters would Mr. Combs tell you to wait to ejaculate?
I mean, it was often. But I think he started really directing us from like the second time on. So the first encounter, he didn't really say much to us. But after that, he would tell us what to do after that.
So again, focusing just on the second time forward.
Okay.
What directions about when you should ejaculate do you remember Mr. Combs giving you?
I mean, yeah. He would often tell me not to come. Don't come yet. And if you feel like you're going to come, stop. But it was more so where he wanted me to ejaculate.
And what do you remember about him? What do you remember him saying about that?
He occasionally wanted me to come on her stomach or, inside of her. And, yeah.
What, if any, directions did Mr. Combs give to you and Ms. Ventura about what sex acts to engage in?
He really would just tell us to rub each other and touch each other. And then he would tell her to, blow me, give me oral sex.
Throughout these encounters, what did you observe Mr. Combs doing?
He was always sitting in the corner, masturbating. And then, occasionally, he would tell me to step off and back up because he was going to get some. And then he would start having sex with her. And I would be sitting off in the corner watching, just...
Other than oral sex and intercourse, what other acts, if any, do you remember Mr. Combs asking you to perform on Ms. Ventura?
I don't recall anything else.
How many times, if any, were you asked to urinate on Ms. Ventura?
Objection. The question?
What, if any, bodily fluids other than ejaculate do you remember there being in these rooms?
Objection. Just on leading grounds. Yes, Judge. That's overruled.
So Cassie was actually the one that asked me to urinate on her. They had just come out of the room and she asked me if I had ever done that before, and I said no. And she told me to do it. And apparently I was doing it wrong because they both stopped me and told me that I was supposed to let a little out at a time and not go full, take a leak on her. But yeah, that was just one time that they asked me to do that.
Objection to the characterization of they asking him to do that. I believe the testimony was that he... I've got it. All right. The jury should disregard the last sentence of the witness's last answer. Miss Comey, you can proceed.
What was Mr. Combs doing when you urinated on Ms. Ventura?
He was masturbating.
What, if any, conversations do you recall having with Mr. Combs about using protection?
I brought up the fact that I would like to start unless she could provide me with her sexual STD history and make sure that she was good. She agreed. I agreed to do the same. And I ended up bringing her mine, but I never received hers.
How often did you use condoms with Ms. Ventura?
By the time we had that conversation, not many.
What did Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs usually do after you ejaculated on her?
They would get up and go inside of wherever the bedroom was inside the hotel room.
And generally, what happened next?
I would be sitting in that room for hours, just sitting there.
And then what do you remember happening?
Sometimes they would come out and tell me, okay, you can go. And other times they would come out and ask me if I'm ready to go again.
About how long did each of these encounters with Mr. Combs and Ms. Ventura usually last?
Could be anywhere from an hour to 10 hours.
And generally, what happened over those hours?
We would have sex, and then I would be sitting there waiting for hours on the couch, just sitting there.
How many times, if any, did you pretend to ejaculate but actually didn't?
Once,
Can you tell us about that?
I think this was on our second go-round, and he told me to make sure that I came inside of her this time, and I went to go do it, but I couldn't do it. I was in my head or whatever the problem was, but I couldn't ejaculate, and so I just pretended to do it. And they got up, they went into the room, and then Sean Combs came out of the room, and he asked me, he said, "Yo, are you sure you came?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm positive." And he was like, "You sure?" And I said, "Yes." And so they went back into the room, and yeah, that was that. But yeah, they definitely knew.
Objection.
I pretended.
The jury should disregard the last sentence in the witness's answer.
You mentioned that at some point you saw Mr. Combs' face. How did that happen?
I was supposed to meet Cassie and Sean Combs down at the Dream Downtown Hotel, I believe. And Cassie called me while I was on my way down there. She told me that they were switching hotels, and they were heading uptown to the Jumeirah Essex house. And she told me at that hotel I don't need to stop at the front desk and that I can just go straight upstairs. And so she told me to give them maybe 30 minutes or something like that before I came upstairs. And so I did that. I went up in about 30 minutes and I knocked on the door. And this was the first time that Sean Combs opened the door as himself. You know, dressed in a suit and pea coat and no mask, no hat, no anything on. Just, it was him.
So what was covering his face when he opened the door?
Nothing.
How did your interactions with Mr. Combs change after you saw his face?
He didn't feel, obviously,
Objection.
I guess.
Without commenting on how Mr. Combs felt?
Yeah.
Or what he thought based on your own observations, how did your interactions change?
He never wore a mask or a hat again.
Who, if anyone, recorded your sexual encounters with Ms. Ventura?
Sean Combs.
Objection. Leading, if any.
Your Honor, it's who, if any?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part. My apologies. Withdrawn. All right.
Who, if anyone, recorded your encounters with Ms. Ventura?
Sean Combs.
About how many times do you remember Mr. Combs recording you and Ms. Ventura during these sexual encounters?
Again, I would be estimating, but once or twice.
And what do you remember Mr. Combs using to record those encounters?
I do believe a cell phone and a camcorder device.
What, if any, form of identification do you remember Mr. Combs asking you for?
He asked me for my ID, my driver's license.
What do you remember about that?
He took my driver's license and took a picture of it. And then said to me, it's just for, insurance, just in case.
What did you understand him to be telling you?
That if I spoke about this to anybody, that he'd
Objection.
I don't know.
Objection. Objection.
I felt,
Hold on. Objection. Grounds. He's about to speculate as to what Mr. Combs intended by asking for a... All right.
Your Honor, he's explaining the context.
Hold on. Miss Comey, why don't you ask a new question that's perhaps more focused?
Based on Mr. Combs' demeanor, tone of voice, and behavior during that conversation, what did you understand he was communicating to you?
Objection. That's overruled.
I understood it to be that he was threatening me.
How many times, if any, did you notice that Ms. Ventura appeared to be under the influence of drugs?
Just once.
What do you remember about that?
I came to a hotel room, and Sean Combs opened the door, and when I went inside the hotel room, he closed the door behind me and then said to me that I don't think this is going to happen today. And I looked at the couch, and Cassie looked to me, she looked like she was completely passed out on the couch, slumped over, and half on the couch, half off of the couch.
What was she wearing?
I think she was wearing lingerie.
What, if any, drugs did you use during your sexual encounters with Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs?
He offered me a Cialis once or twice, and then Molly once.
And who offered you the Molly?
Mr. Combs.
And when you say Molly, what are you referring to?
I don't do drugs, so MDMHA, I don't know what the term is, but I guess ecstasy.
I don't want you to guess, Mr. Phillip. Thank you.
Okay.
What do you remember about the time that you were offered Molly by Mr. Combs?
I remember I really can't tell you who gave me the money, but I had gotten a couple of $1,000s, I guess, after we had sex. I took that Molly. And then I became a totally different person. I went out into Times Square and I handed out $100 bills to every single person that I saw in front of me.
When you say you became a totally different person, how did the Molly make you feel?
It made me feel like a jackass that wanted to go out into the middle of Times Square and hand out $100 bills to every person that he saw.
Can you describe the sensation of taking the Molly for us, please?
I felt sick, like physically sick, like nauseous, but also felt euphoric at the same time.
That time that you took Molly from Mr. Combs, other than Mr. Combs and Ms. Ventura, who else, if anyone, do you remember being at this encounter?
There was one other time that I can remember, it may have been twice, that they invited another guy to come and...
Sorry, let's back up. Can we focus just on the time that he gave you the Molly?
Oh, sure.
On just the time he gave you the Molly.
Okay.
Who else was present, if anyone?
There was another guy who told me he was an actual escort.
Objection.
It's not offered for the truth, Your Honor.
It's overruled.
And what did you see that other guy doing?
He was having sex with Cassie.
Now, where did this encounter happen?
At Cassie's house.
So can you walk us through who all was at Cassie's apartment on this particular occasion?
It was this other guy, myself, Cassie, and Sean Combs,
And what did you see this other guy doing?
having sex with Cassie.
And what did you see Mr. Combs doing while this other guy was having sex with Cassie?
She was actually giving him a blowjob most of the time.
And what do you remember happening during that particular sex act?
The guy kept on looking at Sean in the face, Sean Combs in the face, and Mr. Combs turned to him and basically told him, "Look, motherfucker, you better stop looking at me in my face." And the guy got like real scared. And he's like, "I'm not looking at you." And he's like, "You better not be fucking looking at me." And Cassie jumped off of the couch and like ran to the opposite side of the room. And the guy was just like saying profusely, "I'm not looking at you. I swear I'm not looking at you."
Objection, Judge. All right, let's get a fresh question.
After Cassie ran away, what do you remember happening next?
The guy told Mr. Combs, "I'm not looking at you." Mr. Combs said, "Okay, all right, we here to have fun, not do anything else." And then he told Cassie to come back to the couch. And Cassie asked if they were absolutely positive that they're good now because she seemed like she was scared to go back to the couch.
What did this other man look like?
A black guy, kind of skinny.
And what, if any, contact did you have with him outside of that night?
We, at some point, and I do not recollect how this happened, but we, at some point, exchanged phone numbers.
And about how many times did you see each other in person outside of that night?
We never saw each other out, in person out. You mean, like, met up with each other?
Yes.
No, we had never done that.
Did you speak over the phone occasionally? Objection.
Overruled.
We may have shared a couple of text messages.
Do you remember his name?
No,
Have you spoken to him in the last 10 years?
no.
After Mr. Combs gave you the Molly, what else did he give you that night?
If it was him, cash, a couple $1,000s.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you remember who gave you cash that night?
I don't.
Okay, but do you remember getting cash that night?
I do.
And then what did you do after getting the cash and taking the Molly?
Like I said, I went into the middle of Times Square and I handed out every single dollar they gave me.
Were there ever times when you arrived for one of these encounters with Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs, and it appeared that you were not the first person who had been there?
Yes,
Can you tell us about that?
just times that I would come to the hotel room and there would be like towels on the floor that looked used and bottles of baby oil that were almost finished and Astroglide that was halfway used. And it just looked like, like someone had been there before already.
After that time that you took the Molly and gave the cash away in Times Square, did you see Ms. Ventura or Mr. Combs in person again?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And why not?
Because I, after a certain point, was no longer able to get hard when I was interacting with them.
What were you paid for your sexual encounters with Ms. Ventura in front of Mr. Combs?
What was I paid?
Yes,
In totality?
each time.
Oh, it could be anywhere from $700 to $6,000.
And who do you remember handing you the cash?
It was always Cassie. And I say that saying that I do not remember who handed me the money the last time.
What, if any, comments do you remember Mr. Combs making to you about money?
I remember he came out of the room once and asked me and the gentleman if we had gotten our bread.
Now, stepping back, when you first arrived at the Gramercy Park Hotel for that first encounter, did you expect to be paid for sex?
No.
Had you ever been paid for sex before that night?
No.
Have you ever been paid for sex since you last saw Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs?
No.
When you were able to sexually perform with Ms. Ventura in front of Mr. Combs, what were you paid?
Again, it could have ranged. Oh, you're saying when I couldn't?
When you could.
Okay. It could range anywhere from $700 to thousands of dollars.
And when you could not sexually perform with Ms. Ventura in front of Mr. Combs, what were you paid?
Nothing. Sometimes nothing.
If there were times when you were not paid, why did you go back to more meetings with Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs?
Well, I, for one, was not someone that was getting paid for sex. In my head, I was just excited that I was in this world and, happy to be involved with people with such notoriety. I didn't care if I got paid one way or another. I never asked them for a single dollar. They gave that to me every time that I went to see them. So for me, it was just, this is just something that they do. They have that kind of money. They want to share it with me. I'm fine with that.
What sexual performance issues did you experience when meeting with Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs?
I could not get hard. You want the medical term for that? Erectile dysfunction.
When was the first time you experienced that sexual performance issue?
After the first time that I saw him hit her.
Where were you when you first saw him hit her?
At Cassie's house.
And when you say you saw him hit her, who did you see hit whom?
Sean Combs hit Cassie.
Right before the violence started, where were you in Cassie's apartment?
I was sitting on her couch, which was directly behind her.
And where was Cassie?
She was sitting at her computer, which was facing a wall directly in front of me.
Where was Mr. Combs?
He was in her bedroom, Cassie's bedroom.
And what had happened just before this violence?
I had sex with her, with Cassie.
What do you remember happening?
From the time that I had sex with her?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I had sex with her. We finished doing what we were doing, and then they both went into the bedroom. She eventually came out and she got on her computer and Mr. Combs was in her bedroom. Cassie was on her computer, and I heard him yell out, "Babe, come here."
Let me pause you right there.
Sure.
You said you heard him yell out. Who did you hear yell out?
I heard Mr. Combs yell out to Cassie, "Babe, come here."
How did Cassie respond when Mr. Combs said, "Babe, come here"?
Cassie was on her computer and she said, "Hold on one second. I have my personal information out on my computer right now."
What happened right after Cassie said, "Hold on one second"?
Mr. Combs, came out of the room and I just saw a bottle fly past her and hit the wall.
What kind of bottle?
It looked like a liquor bottle. And then Mr. Combs, walked over to her, to Cassie. He grabbed her by her hair and started dragging her by her hair into her bedroom. And
let me ask you, as Mr. Combs was dragging Cassie by her hair to her bedroom, what did you hear Mr. Combs saying?
He wasn't saying anything while he was dragging her. She was yelling.
What was she saying?
She was screaming. And Mr. Combs, pulled her into the bedroom and I could hear him. What sound? Like him slapping her.
What else could you hear from the bedroom?
She was screaming.
What did you hear her saying?
I'm sorry. And then Mr. Combs, was basically saying, "Bitch, when I tell you to come here, you come now, not later."
How did Ms. Ventura compare in physical size to Mr. Combs?
She's tiny compared to him.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said she's tiny compared to him.
How did you react to this violence?
I was shocked. I came out of nowhere. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do.
Did you intervene?
No.
Why not?
Because I knew that the chances that there were 4 or 5 big bodyguards in another room.
Objection. Sustained.
Without speculating about what might have happened, can you just generally explain why you didn't go into that bedroom?
I didn't know what to do. I was shocked. In my mind, it was going through my head that if I tried to do something, I might lose my life.
Objection.
Your Honor, I'm happy to explain why I think that's perfectly admissible.
It's overruled.
And why didn't you call the police and report what you saw?
Because
Again, without speculating.
I'm not speculating. I'm just telling you what was in my mind and what I was feeling at the time. My thoughts were that this was someone with an unlimited power.
Objection. That's overruled.
My thoughts was that this was someone with unlimited power. And chances are that even if I did go to the police, that I might still end up losing my life.
Objection. Move to strike.
Your Honor, it's the same basis of admissibility as the prior explanation of his state of mind.
Denied. Motion is denied.
What happened after the beating stopped?
Sean Combs and Cassie, came out of the room. Cassie was visibly, very upset, did not look like she wanted to continue doing anything. But Mr. Combs asked, "Are y'all ready to continue now?" And I couldn't do anything after that.
What did you try to do?
I don't know. I may have tried to act like everything was okay. I mean, I don't know. I don't really recall.
How do you remember that interaction ending?
I remember leaving. I do not remember them handing me money, and I probably wouldn't have taken that anyway.
Objection.
Why did you return to meet?
Hold on. The jury should disregard the last sentence of the witness's answer. Miss Comey, you may continue.
Why did you return to meet with Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs again after you witnessed that violence?
I've had conversations in between our interactions with Cassie, and I felt like I had started developing at least some kind of a friendship with her. I may have been speculating, but it was my way of being able to check on her and know that she was okay because she had asked me not to.
Objection. Well, let's stop right there, and Miss Comey, you can ask your next question.
Let me ask you this. How many other times did you hear Mr. Combs yell at Ms. Ventura?
Once after that.
Where was this?
At the Jumeirah Essex House Hotel.
Would you please describe the layout of the hotel room you were in?
There's a door, the front door. When you walk into the front door, there's a bedroom right in front of that door. If you turn left, there's a hall, a foyer, that goes down into a living room, common area. Bathroom, where the foyer is on the left-hand side.
What do you remember happening right before you heard Mr. Combs yell?
I think we had sex during this encounter.
Objection. Never mind. Withdrawn.
And then after you had sex, what do you remember?
Sean Combs and Cassie were in the bedroom for a while, and
where were you when they were in the bedroom?
I was in the living room.
And what did you hear coming from the bedroom?
Out of nowhere, I could hear Cassie yelling, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And then I could hear again what sounded like she was being slapped, or someone was being slapped around and slammed around the room. And I looked around the corner to where the foyer was, and I saw Mr. Combs walk out of the hotel altogether without clothes on. He might have had a towel on. And then Cassie came running into the living room, and she literally jumped into my lap, and she was shaking, literally, like her whole entire body was shaking, like she was terrified.
Do you remember what she was wearing?
I don't know.
Do you remember what she said to you when she jumped into your lap?
I remember what I said to her.
Well, first let me ask, do you remember what she said to you or no?
At what point?
When she jumped into your lap.
I don't know if she said anything to me when she jumped into my lap. I don't remember.
What did you say to her?
I asked her, why is she doing this? Why is she staying with this guy if he's...
Objection.
Your Honor, it's not offered for the truth. It's a question.
What's the ground of the objection? Hearsay. Overruled.
Can you tell us again what you said to Cassie?
I asked her why she was staying with this guy if he is hitting her and beating her like this, and I tried to explain to her that she was in real danger if she stayed with him, and she basically tried to convince me that it was okay. It's okay. I'm fine. I'll be okay. And I just kept trying to tell her that you're not okay and you need to get help. And
what do you remember happening next?
She and I were alone. This was the first time we were alone, and Cassie was not somebody that likes to kiss.
Objection. Overruled.
During our interactions, Cassie was not a kisser, but in this instance, she just started making out with me. And we ended up getting into it. But the fact that I was alone with her this time, I had no problem getting hard. And right when we were actually about to start having sex, I realized that Mr. Combs had re-entered the room and he was sort of sneaking around the corner watching us. And once he realized that we could see him, he came into the room and basically was saying that, yeah, that he liked that. He liked that we were getting along in that way.
And what do you remember happening next?
I think the second that he came back into the room, I was done again. I couldn't continue.
Why didn't you go to the police after this incident?
I told you, again, I was concerned for my life. By this point, he had taken my ID and taken a picture of it, and I felt threatened by what he said to me. And I felt that, at the very least, I could try to get her to realize that she needed to leave and maybe try to help her that way. But I felt like maybe the police he has, Sean Combs might have someone within the police department.
Objection, objection, objection. That's sustained.
Just as to the last sentence, Your Honor.
Move to strike all. Well, the objection wasn't articulated, but I'm sustaining the objection and instructing the jury not to consider the last portion of the witness's answer.
Why didn't you go into the bedroom to intervene when you heard Cassie crying and saying, "I'm sorry," and what sounded like a beating?
Well, I had no idea if I would have been met with a gun or...
Objection.
Without speculating about what might have happened, can you just generally explain why you didn't go into that bedroom?
Because my life was at risk if...
Objection.
I did so.
That's overruled.
One moment, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Can we take a 2-minute break, Judge, please? Yes, I was going to suggest that. Can you give us, before we take our break, can you give us just a general how much time do you anticipate your cross-examination taking? And I'm not holding you to anything. I'm just trying to get a sense of the clock.
We will go until the end of the day.
Okay, all right.
At a minimum.
Good. Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute recess just so everyone can stretch their legs, and we will be back at 4:20. All rise for the jury.